Dementia doesn't begin with memory loss. It starts with speech. Here's what you need to know. When people think of dementia, the first image that often comes to mind is someone forgetting names, faces, or appointments. But what if the earliest signs were hiding in plain sight, in the way someone speaks? Long before the memory fades, the brain begins to malfunction in subtle but powerful ways. And one of the earliest red flags is not forgetting a word, but using the wrong one without realizing it. These speech changes can appear up to 10 years before an official dementia diagnosis, making them a crucial early warning sign. And the most alarming part? The person experiencing these changes usually has no idea it's happening. Let's break it down and share the real-life stories that make this both urgent and deeply personal. But before we dive into all that, if you're new here, welcome to the channel. We're here to help you live healthier, feel better, and age vibrantly. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a wellness tip that could change your life. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We love hearing from viewers around the world. 1. Saying the wrong words without knowing it. This isn't your everyday forgetfulness. This is the brain's internal language system beginning to fail. Unlike those occasional tip-of-the-tongue moments we all experience, people with early dementia begin to replace familiar words with completely unrelated ones. And they do it with confidence. For example, they may look at a microwave and call it a clock, or refer to their pet dog as a jacket. These word substitutions don't make sense, and they often occur without the person realizing they've said anything wrong. This bizarre phenomenon stems from disrupted neural pathways in the brain. Normally, when you speak, your brain retrieves the correct word by linking meaning, memory, and language, all in a fraction of a second. But when those networks break down, the brain grabs a random word from storage, often one that sounds similar or is stored in a nearby region, and inserts it without proper context. Barbara, a 74-year-old retired government worker, began calling her cat Table. She'd say, "Come here, Table," while clearly looking at her pet. Her family laughed it off at first, assuming it was a quirky joke. But soon she began mixing up words for everyday objects, calling a spoon a tree or the phone a window. A neurological assessment confirmed that her brain was struggling to link objects with their correct names, a clear indicator of early semantic breakdown associated with dementia. 2. Losing the ability to follow conversations. Another powerful, but often overlooked, sign is a growing difficulty in keeping up with conversations, especially in social settings. In early dementia, people struggle to process rapid speech, follow multiple voices in a group discussion, or hold on to what was said just moments before. This isn't about hearing loss, it's about cognitive overload. The brain's ability to absorb, interpret, and respond to language is slowly deteriorating. You may notice frequent interruptions like, "Wait, what did you just say?" Long pauses before responding, difficulty jumping in at the right moment, seeming distracted or lost during conversations, nodding or agreeing without understanding what's being said. Eventually, they may begin to avoid conversations altogether, withdrawing socially out of fear or embarrassment. And that isolation only accelerates cognitive decline. Dav, a 71-year-old former salesman, loved lively dinner parties. But his wife noticed a shift. He was quieter, less engaged, and didn't laugh at jokes like he used to. He later admitted that following the conversations was exhausting. Sometimes he forgot what someone had just said seconds earlier. Concerned, the family took him in for evaluation, and he was diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment, a common precursor to dementia. 3. Flat, emotionless speech, losing the voice of personality. Dementia doesn't just steal facts and names. Over time, it can erode the personality itself. And one of the most heartbreaking signs is a change in emotional expression. In the early stages, people may begin speaking in a monotone voice, lacking the natural fluctuations in tone that express joy, sadness, excitement, or surprise. This happens because the brain regions responsible for emotion regulation and vocal modulation begin to deteriorate. Imagine someone talking about the birth of a grandchild in the same dull tone they used to describe taking out the trash. The voice becomes robotic, not because they feel nothing, but because their brain can no longer express those feelings through speech. This lack of emotional resonance in their voice can make conversations feel disconnected, leaving loved ones feeling like they're slowly losing the person they once knew. Lydia, a warm and vibrant 69-year-old grandmother, was always known for her expressive storytelling and contagious laughter. But her daughter noticed something chilling. Her mother's voice had become flat. Whether talking about her favorite TV shows or a family birthday, she sounded emotionless. That emotional dullness was the first sign of cognitive change, and it later led to a diagnosis of early-stage Alzheimer's. Number 4. Frequently losing the train of thought. One of the lesser-known, yet deeply troubling, signs of early dementia is when a person frequently starts a sentence and then suddenly goes silent. Their thoughts vanish midstream. They pause, look confused, and can't remember what they were trying to say. At first glance, it may seem like tiredness or distraction. But in reality, this is the brain struggling to hold onto thoughts in real time. A major clinical study found that as dementia begins to take hold, the neural circuits responsible for organizing and sequencing thoughts begin to break down. As a result, maintaining the thread of a conversation becomes an overwhelming task. You may notice sentences that trail off midway without resolution, long pauses as they try to remember what they were about to say, increased use of filler words like or you know, moments of visible frustration as they search for the right words, frequent admissions like, "Never mind, I forgot what I was saying." This doesn't just make conversations harder. It also leads to emotional withdrawal, as the individual starts avoiding dialogue altogether to escape the embarrassment of mental lapses. Max, age 80, was once an eloquent speaker who enjoyed telling stories. But lately, his wife noticed something odd. He'd start talking about a memory or news event, and then suddenly stop. "Never mind. I lost it," he would mutter, shaking his head. What seemed like occasional forgetfulness soon became a daily struggle. A neurological evaluation confirmed the early stages of dementia. His mind was no longer able to hold a linear thought from beginning to end. Number 5. Repeating phrases or questions without realizing. Repetition is one of the most recognizable, yet often misunderstood, signs of cognitive decline. A person in the early stages of dementia may begin asking the same question multiple times in a short period, even if they've already received an answer. They might also repeat entire phrases or sentences during a single conversation, seemingly unaware they've already said it. This repetition isn't intentional or manipulative. It happens because the brain is no longer storing short-term language information. In other words, the brain fails to register that something was just said, causing the person to unknowingly loop back and say it again. It's as if their thoughts are stuck on repeat. Over time, you may notice repeating the same sentence several times during a conversation, asking, "What time is it?" or "Did I take my medication?" again and again, using the same expressions or phrases across different topics or days. Conversations that feel disconnected or circular. This behavior can be deeply frustrating for loved ones, especially if they don't realize it's a neurological issue. It can feel like the person isn't listening, but in truth, their brain can no longer retain the interaction. Margaret, 67, began asking her husband multiple times a day, "Did I take my medicine?" even though he had just told her she did. In casual conversations, she would say, "It's a nice day outside," over and over again, sometimes minutes apart. Her family initially brushed it off as stress or distraction. But when it became a daily pattern, they sought medical advice. The diagnosis: early dementia. The repetition was not forgetfulness. It was a failure of the brain to form new memory pathways. Dementia is not just about forgetting names or getting older. It's a neurological failure of the brain's ability to function, organize, and express. Studies show that by the time dementia reaches its advanced stages, up to 93% of patients do not survive beyond 5 years. But that sobering statistic can be changed if we catch the early signs. And speech is one of the very first systems to reveal the damage. Early detection means more time to intervene, more treatment options, more years of meaningful communication, and most importantly, a better chance to preserve the essence of the person you love. If you're noticing signs like forgotten words, repetitive questions, blank stares mid-sentence, or flat emotional tones, don't ignore them. These are not normal signs of aging. These are calls for help, because once the next stage sets in, it only gets harder. Up next, we'll dive into 4 more shocking early symptoms, including one that most doctors overlook entirely. Stick around. This information could save a life. Number 6. Mixing up pronouns and tenses. In early dementia, something as basic as forming a sentence can become confusing. Not because the person forgets the words, but because the brain can no longer properly sequence them. One common sign is the frequent and unpredictable mixing of pronouns and verb tenses. A person might say, "They go to the store yesterday," instead of "he went to the store," or confuse relationships entirely, saying things like "she is my son" when referring to their daughter. These linguistic errors aren't just slips of the tongue. They are evidence of a deeper breakdown in the brain's language processing center. As dementia progresses, these mistakes happen more often without the person realizing it, confuse listeners, and make conversations harder to follow. Reflect a loss of understanding of time and identity structure in language. What's truly alarming is that this isn't about memory. It's about syntax and logic. The brain can no longer correctly link a person to a pronoun or place an event in the right time frame. And because the speaker may be unaware of the mistake, they don't correct it, leading to increasing confusion in daily interactions. Carl, once a lively conversationalist, began saying things like, "She is my son," and "I go to church last week." At first, his family thought he was just joking around. But when these mistakes became a regular occurrence, they grew worried. A cognitive assessment revealed the truth. Carlos was in the early stages of dementia, and his brain was beginning to lose the ability to organize and express thoughts coherently. Number 7. Struggling to find the right words. Imagine knowing what you want to say, but the words simply won't come. It's on the tip of your tongue, but just out of reach. This experience becomes frequent in early dementia, where word-finding difficulty is one of the most persistent and frustrating symptoms. People often hesitate mid-sentence as they try to recall a specific word. Replace it with a vague placeholder like "thing," "that stuff," or, use roundabout descriptions like "the cold box" instead of "refrigerator." This happens because dementia weakens the brain's word retrieval network, the part responsible for accessing stored vocabulary. The person knows what the object is and how to use it, but the word itself is lost in a fog. Over time, this breakdown in vocabulary leads to increased reliance on overly simple or generalized words, longer pauses, and more incomplete sentences. Emotional frustration that can cause the person to withdraw from conversations. Annabelle, a 66-year-old retired schoolteacher, began forgetting simple words when talking to her grandchildren. She would say things like, "Put your juice in the cold thing," instead of "fridge." At first, the family chalked it up to aging. But when it started happening every day, they took her for an evaluation. The results showed early-stage Alzheimer's. Her language processing abilities were beginning to fail. Number 8. Speaking in shorter, simpler sentences. Once fluent and expressive, someone with early dementia may begin speaking in sentences that sound choppy, robotic, and overly simple. The richness of their speech fades. Where they once said, "I went to the store, grabbed some groceries, then stopped by the cafe for a latte," they now say, "Went store. Got food. Coffee." This isn't just about forgetfulness. It's a coping mechanism. As the brain begins to struggle with organizing complex thoughts, it simplifies. It trims away the details, the grammar, and the nuance, leaving behind only the bare essentials. Researchers have found that sentence length and complexity shrink in the early stages of cognitive decline. The brain compensates by shortening speech to reduce mental load. Responses become vague, repetitive, or emotionally flat. The person may also avoid descriptive language, struggle to link ideas together, sound monotone or out of sync in conversation. John, a 70-year-old retired journalist known for his colorful storytelling, gradually stopped sharing long anecdotes. Instead of describing his day in detail, he'd say, "Walked dog, saw friend, came home." His wife noticed the change, but assumed he was just getting tired. A medical evaluation later revealed that John was experiencing mild cognitive impairment. The early stages of dementia were eroding his ability to build sentences the way he once did. Each of these signs, mixing up pronouns and tenses, struggling for words, and simplifying speech, may seem minor in isolation. But together, they form a clear pattern of neurological decline. They're not just quirks of aging. They're visible proof that the brain is no longer processing language, memory, and time the way it once did. And here's what's crucial. Catching these speech-related changes early can lead to quicker diagnosis, earlier treatment, and better outcomes. With the right intervention, you may be able to slow the progression and preserve quality of life. Coming up next, the final signs may shock you, especially the one that most people completely overlook. Stay with us. It could help save someone you love. Number 9. Slurred or slowed speech. A subtle yet alarming signal of brain decline. Most people think of dementia as purely memory loss. But in truth, dementia doesn't just affect what you think. It affects how you speak. One often overlooked warning sign is a noticeable change in the clarity and pace of speech, where once fluid sentences begin to sound slurred, slowed, or even mumbled. This isn't just a matter of being tired or speaking softly. Studies have shown that in the early stages of dementia, the brain's ability to control the muscles responsible for speech, the tongue, vocal cords, and lips, begins to deteriorate. This leads to speech that sounds drawn out, hesitant, or garbled, struggles with pronouncing words that were once effortless, unusual pauses mid-sentence as the brain struggles to coordinate the motor signals needed for articulation. Over time, this change can become more pronounced and more frustrating for both the speaker and those listening. What starts as an occasional mumble can evolve into full sentences that are difficult to understand, even for close family members. This isn't just about communication. It's about neuromuscular breakdown, a sign that cognitive and motor functions in the brain are beginning to fail. Speech may become slower in rhythm, softer in tone, lacking in the usual expressiveness. Diana, an 83-year-old retired nurse, had always been sharp and articulate. But her family began to notice that her words were becoming slow and slurred, as if she were overly tired all the time. She'd take long pauses while speaking and struggle with certain syllables that never gave her trouble before. They dismissed it as a minor speech issue, chalking it up to aging. But months later, a neurological exam revealed the truth. Diana had developed vascular dementia. By the time the diagnosis came, significant damage had already occurred. Speech changes, especially when they're sudden or persistent, aren't normal signs of aging. They're signs of brain damage in progress. And once that damage begins, it doesn't repair itself. That's why early detection and prevention are critical. If you or someone you love is starting to show signs of slowed, hesitant, or slurred speech, don't wait. These aren't just vocal issues. They're the brain waving a red flag. If you recognized any of these speech changes, in yourself or someone you love, don't ignore them. These aren't just harmless habits. They could be your brain's first cry for help. Early action can slow the damage, sometimes even stop it. If this video helped you understand the warning signs of dementia, give it a thumbs up to help others find it too. Subscribe to Healthy Life for more science-backed tips to protect your brain and body before it's too late. And leave a comment below if you've noticed any of these signs in someone you know. You could help another family realize what's really going on. Now tap the next video on your screen to discover powerful ways to nourish your brain and stay sharp for years to come. Your future self will thank you.